Okay, it's 3 o'clock. We've got lots of people already here and coming through very, very quickly. Hi, Nadine. Hi, Dr. Nadine. How are you?
Hi, Tarek. How are you doing?
I'm very well indeed. How are these times treating you? How are you feeling these days?
Well, it sort of fluctuates throughout the days. There are days where it just feels like it's one long weekend, sort of, because we're not getting out and we're just staying home, and practically the days are just the same. And there are days where I just look at things and you say, at least we're still safe. At least we are, trying our best to move on, to live our lives. Uh, some people have unfortunately lost their jobs due to this crisis. So at least try to be grateful for still being able to share knowledge and to still produce meaningful outcomes from this crisis. So,
I mean, you're a data scientist, you're a techie, you're comfortable with technology, and you've got the cloud and you've got your platform. So location doesn't really matter much to you, does it? So this thing is obviously not slowing you down in any way, and you're making the same impact as you were before.
From a professional standpoint and my ability to do my job, it has not really affected me. The fact is my job is practically set up to be done anywhere in the world. The fact is also our organization, my organization, Crayon, and I'm proud to say that and to be part of that organization. We have sort of all the tools and capabilities to do remote work, to have our work from anywhere in the world. So I believe a lot of organizations may have the underlying infrastructure. Maybe they don't have the culture yet, but now is probably just a time when things have changed and they are actually forcing us to get out of our comfort zones and to find other ways to collaborate and to work. So,
what do you think at this point in time, before we get into that, is in your mind the single biggest challenge that we're looking out there? The single, if there's one big thing we need to start with, what do we put in our heads?
Well, that's not an easy question to answer. There are many challenges that are being posed on us throughout this crisis. I think a lot of us are worried about how long this crisis is gonna last. Obviously, being in full lockdown mode, not being able to move, raises a lot of questions on really our quality of life, our well-being, our safety is I think it's the primary concern of everybody. This is not just a personal and national concern, this is an international thing. Everybody in the world, no matter where you are, you can be worried about that. Obviously, the world economy is being shaken up by this. Businesses are struggling. I'm sure not just people, but also businesses are going under. So.
Sure. Okay, folks, we'll start officially in about a minute. So I thought I would just engage directly with yourselves. You know me, I'm Tariq Qureshi. I'm the CEO of Exponential EQ, which is a future foresight platform. And we are an enabling platform. We are a transformation platform. And this is like bread and butter for us. This is sort of what we do. Never, ever did we imagine that it'll happen with such speed and with such, in many ways, with quite a lot of sadness. And so, it's wonderful for all of you to be here. Today, obviously, we'll talk about the COVID crisis. But I know Dr. Nadine well, and I've worked with her a lot. And it's very interesting that her view on AI, and the title for today was AI for Dummies. And I consider myself as the biggest dummy because for me, I'm a business person and I want to use AI as opposed to go into depth. So I wanted to engage with Dr. Nadine and ask her what her views are. So she'll give us a flavor, a helicopter view at a very, very practical level. And then we will look at some other aspects of how it connects with the financial, business, and economic world. and then a deep dive into the COVID crisis and how all of these technologies are helping what we can do as we go forward. Okay, folks, I think it's 3:05. Out of courtesy to the people who have joined, I think we should actually start, and the others can basically join as we go forward. It's a free-flowing discussion, ladies and gentlemen. It's not designed to be over-formal, and so I'll explain what it is first and how it's going to be structured. We'll spend about 5 minutes, some opening remarks from me, where we are to set the tone in the context of the future. Then we will ask Nadine to talk about the AI for Dummies philosophy, the simple foundational principles of artificial intelligence and how it impacts us. That'll go on for about 12 to 15 minutes, and we'll break at that point in time with Q&A. We'll look at some of the questions that you are posing, because I'd like to create a bridge between what we understand in terms of where AI is and how it affects our business and economies and the financial markets and so on, and then dovetail into the COVID crisis, because otherwise it just gets overwhelming. And I'm sure you're having exactly the same experience. There's so much information coming through that you really are. I'm overwhelmed with, and I'm reading literally hours every single day, and the information level is going up. But we have to be very, very careful. Then we'll come back and talk another 15 to 20 minutes on the COVID crisis itself. And then we will end with about 15 minutes of question and answers with a view to get some solutions, get some real candid thoughts with yourself. We'll make it fast-paced, fast-moving, and off we go. Okay. From my side, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in absolutely unprecedented times. And you know, it's not just a platitude. It actually really is. Every single aspect of our lives is fundamentally changed and changing even more and we don't even know how far it's going to go. The economy is changing, health is changing, the impact of technology and how it works, and our whole human relationships are changing, working from home rather than working from outside, and how that is going to impact. You know, I read a statistic just yesterday that this little invisible virus has got over 4 billion people in the world who have been asked to stay at home. More than half of humanity, as we know it today, is sitting at home and trying to work from there. So we're finding new solutions to this. You know, there is a pandemic, and there's obviously a pandemic, which is the virus itself. I believe that there are 2 more pandemics that are happening as we speak right now. And these pandemics, ladies and gentlemen, as I would say, would be, number 1, is a pandemic of fear, because the way the fear has gripped us is really quite incredible. The second is the pandemic of isolation and loneliness. There are so many people who are out there who are extremely lonely, and it has all sorts of other implications in terms of depression and stress, and in some cases, other issues that will start coming from there. So there are effectively 3 pandemics running at this moment in time. So we are living in an exponential crisis. An exponential crisis needs really exponential solutions. It needs exponential thinking. It needs exponential ideas. It needs an exponentially overflowing heart to find the quality of products and solutions that we as a company and we as a group are providing. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, we need to have exponential empathy. We need exponential compassion and humanity to actually deal with this future. We need to work on softer issues of trust and cooperation, because the world has to work in an unprecedented way to actually come together and work together. We have one enemy. For the first time in history, we have one common enemy, and the whole world has come together. So actually, it hasn't come together, but the whole world is facing this one enemy, and there are some pockets of collaboration, but that is what we're going to discuss today, is how much more of that do we need. So we have one common enemy, and that enemy is being attacked by science and technology and consciousness and collective intelligence, and every aspect and every ounce of our energy is being focused on that one enemy. So we will win. We will prevail. We will come ahead. This will end. And those solutions are there, and it's going to happen. What we now need to do is to work on this period that we are going through, this transition phase, and to come out on the other side, really transforming and getting in and thriving in the future. This thing is so important right now, this time, the next 2, 3, 4 months that we've got to really galvanize ourselves. So what we started doing was actually use this time and said, how can we support people? How can we contribute to people? So we started this webinar series, and I'll share the screen for 1 second, if I may, and it shows basically what the series is going to be about. We are going to focus on the COVID crisis. We are looking at future solutions and how to transition our way through. And opportunity is within us at this point in time because of the changes that are happening. So the first one is Nadine. Then we have an international speaker called John Sene. He's going to come in next Monday. Then followed with Fadi Hindu, who is a top CEO of an insurance company, and now he is running his own startup. So that's very interesting. I'll speak on trust in about a month's time, because I think at this juncture, trust has become one of the most critical things that we need to have. And there's a dearth of trust, and we need to build on that, because countries will need to cooperate on information, on collaborating, tracing people, etc., etc. But while we're doing all of this, we need health resilience, and Professor Dr. Mace Makaya, she's going to be helping us with that. Roberto, you might know of him. He is the managing director for all the startups from Middle East and Africa for Microsoft. He's going to come and talk to us about startups and entrepreneurship. Because at this time, a huge number of new startups will be created because we've got the opportunity to do it. And the first half, finally, we'll have Dr. Jerome Glenn, who is the head of the Millennium Project. And we will talk about long-term distant foresight and scenario planning. And he has been doing this for many, many years. The second half of the series, we have Professor Marcos Esposito. We have the head of the IFC courts. We have a top international expert on smart cities. We have many other, we have 6 more speakers coming in the second half of the series. And so this is how we're putting it together. All of it focused on this COVID-19 crisis and how we come out of it. So that's the big picture, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted you to understand where we are and how we can move forward. So that was my little opening preamble, and over to Nadine. Nadine, would you like to sort of start with your presentation and then take us through and tell us about AI for dummies like me? Over to you.
Okay, so before I start, I just have 2 things to say. Number one is that when I originally envisioned this seminar, I had a bit of a slightly different way of approaching it, but I have pivoted underneath the COVID-19 umbrella. So my focus will talk a little bit about how the COVID-19 crisis is affecting the world of AI, the world of finance. I also have a very nice case study which I will be sharing with you around COVID-19, which I have done with my team, which shows really the potential of AI in tackling this crisis. We will talk a little bit about what technology is doing for us within these difficult times. So that is the first thing that I wanted to say. Number 2 is that I would like to encourage all participants to either raise their hands if they have any issues, or if they would like to submit any questions or participate in the chat. Please feel free to do any of that. Throughout, we will try to keep an eye on the Q&A, and I'll try to address those throughout if the time calls for it, or whenever we take a short break for discussion, we can address these. So please feel free to participate, and this is an interactive thing, and if you would like me to emphasize any point, please do let me know. So let's not waste anybody's time. Let's just dive into it. The presentation is going to be quick, short. I know how difficult it is for everybody to sit in front of a computer and listen to people talk. So I'm going to try to keep it fun. So the reason why I called it AI for Dummies is because I have felt like the biggest dummy in the world when I was preparing for this seminar. The reason is that when you spend so much of your time worrying about a lot of the details within any topic, and I've spent 10 years of my life involved in the deepest details of AI, it becomes very difficult to take a step back and to take a holistic approach and to view things from a different perspective, especially when you add a layer of an international crisis on top of it. So by all means, this is meant for us to do some thinking together, to view AI from a different standpoint, and to have a bit of a holistic view on what AI is, why is it so important, what's all the hype is about. So to start with, we see a lot of trend when it comes to emerging technologies, and AI is one of them, which is that we start with a hype. Everybody thinks that, wow, it's nice, we all have great expectations, it's normally overestimated, and a lot of times we get a lot of disappointment because we still don't know what this technology is and what it does. Then we move into a learn sort of phase where we try to create talent, where we try to implement things, where we try to understand a little bit more about this technology. And unfortunately, for the past few years, even though AI as a technology is not new, but for the past few years, we have been stuck in this phase. We have not really been able to bridge this gap between the learn phase and the embrace phase, where things start becoming more and more normalized across organization, where things become infused all across the board. And the reason for that is that we have seen a lot of challenges around acceptance, a lot of trust and ethics issues, a lot of resistance, mistrust of technology, misunderstanding of technology. And looking now into AI, specifically now that the COVID-19 crisis has hit the world deeply and has shaken our foundations, I think it's now the best time for us to shake ourselves out of the situation that we are into and to really start moving towards embracing these technologies, not just AI, but all the technologies, the cloud, all of these technologies that are trying to break through, are trying to make themselves important within our organization, but are facing a lot of resistance. So I think this is where we have a big opportunity now, despite that the world is coming to a standstill, despite that our businesses are being greatly affected by this crisis. It's really now a great time, an ideal time for us to start looking at these technologies, to start leveraging these platforms, which can really help us redefine our businesses around this crisis, not just for now, but also for the world post-COVID-19. So within that idea in mind, what we see is that a lot of us, when we're approaching these technology and AI, we have a bit of a superficial understanding of the technology. We really don't want to go in there, especially that we are busy with our lives. We have companies to run. We have a board chasing us for returns, etc., etc. So we really stay at that level. But if you go really to leverage the power, the capabilities of these technology, it's really, really important for all of us dummies to go down a little bit deeper. We don't really need to have all the deep technical fluency for us to be able to understand and to build a vision around AI, but we need to have a little bit of a meaningful understanding around what it is, what are its limitations, what are its potential, how it can be applied, what are the things that I need to know to be able to start adopting these technologies. So it's really a great time for us to start breaking the barriers. We are at an inflection point, especially because a lot of us are now at home, quarantined, and not being able to run a lot of part of our businesses. So it's really a good time for us to start venturing into the unknown, if it is, and to start looking at a much deeper understanding of AI. So to take things a little bit further, normally what we normally see with these technologies is a bit of an increasing maturity over time, which is really, really slow. So everybody would say, oh, no, let's wait and see if the technology is mature or not. Let's see whether we can get any returns out of it. What is my ROC? How much time do I need to spend? How much money do I need to spend? And usually we go into POCs or proof of concepts where we have small use cases and we try to just see, oh, well, can I speed up this process or can I automate that process, so on and so forth. And it stays at that level most of the time. And most of the organization today in 2020 are still at that level. Unfortunately, we were not able to break the barriers and to push ourselves towards building a strategy, toward building an overall vision that covers the entire organization. I don't want to say fortunately, but maybe that is the case, but this COVID-19 crisis, what it has done for this journey is that it has breaking it down. It's an exponential speeding curve now. It's no longer a small incremental curve where things are going really, really slow, one step at a time. Things are now being changed and transformed at a much, much, much faster speed. And the COVID-19 crisis has really shown us the value of these technologies. If we look at the companies that have flourished throughout this crisis, they are all companies which leverage the cloud, which leverage technologies, digitization, transformation. These are the companies who are today in this crisis flourishing, continuing to run their core business, being able to deliver and growing in value. And this is our opportunity now. No matter which industry you are, no matter what organization you are in, now it is the time for us to benefit from this crisis, even though it is a crisis, and to start pivoting ourselves toward adoption. If this crisis has taught us anything, is that this is the way to move forward. So let me now just allow me, please, to be a professor for 2 minutes and to explain a little bit of the jargon that is around AI, because we hear a lot of these terms thrown here and there. So please allow me. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, what do we mean by it? Artificial intelligence is nothing but a state. It's a word that is used to describe something. Now, when we talk about machine learning is nothing but a solution that is used to achieve artificial intelligence. So this is just meant as for us to talk a little bit about these terms that we see that are thrown out there and where a lot of hype goes around, to be able for us to understand really what it means for us. So at this stage, what we are trying to do as scientists is build machine learning to achieve artificial intelligence. So this is so far where we are. Now, because now we are at such a need to start adopting these technologies, to start building and developing these technologies, I think the most important question we can ask ourselves now is, what do I need to start building? How do we start building? And not only just start building, we are building at an accelerated pace. We are building and we're trying to do things really, really, really fast. So what is it that we need to start launching these technologies into our organizations? Number one, what we need is obviously developers. And I know that this sounds a little bit weird because everybody's going to say, oh, but we do not have the capacity to hire people. It takes too much time to build talent, for people to get incorporated in our organizations, to understand what we do, to get them into our culture, into our ecosystem, etc. My response to that is that we don't need necessarily to hire people, to hire developers for us to start leveraging these technologies. This is the time where we need to be looking at ecosystems, where we need to be looking at partnerships, where we need to be looking at outsourcing, at leveraging assets, all of this. So that is the most important part from a business model standpoint. What we also need from a technical standpoint is data. And we all have data sitting in our organizations, in different systems, in CRM, in ERP, in all of these systems which we either don't have a full understanding of, or are there, but we really don't know what is there. So now it is the time for us to look at what is it that we're doing with our data. Are we really taking the best out of it? Are we really leveraging it to the best of its potential? And if that is not the case, then how can we do that? So number two that we need to be looking at is computing power. And here I still see a lot of organizations today which unfortunately are still investing in hardware, are still investing in building IT departments. Ladies and gentlemen, this is no longer needed. This is no longer the case. Computing power is now at a click away, sitting on the cloud. All you need is to create an account and to have a working internet connection. So really, it doesn't take that long to build computing power. And the last component that we need to be looking at is platforms. And the good news is that when it comes to AI, a lot of the algorithms that we have, a lot of the platforms that we have, a lot of the technologies that we have to serve our businesses are open source. They are out there. People all over the world, developers all over the world have taken up among themselves to publish things, to put things for everybody to use and to build on top. And this is one of the main reasons why AI has grown so much in potential and in value. So really, this is what we need to be taking a look at. Now, the other question that people would ask is, how can I use it? Where? Which processes? And the simple answer to that is that every single process in your organization has the potential to be transformed with AI. Whether you're talking about prediction. So if you are a financial institution, now in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, you need to know which one of your customers are likely to default on their loan. Since your employees are now sitting at home, you no longer have the workforce to create accounts and to do your KYC process and your AML process. So now you can automate all of that at a click away. If you want to know which of your clients are in trouble and which need help and in what areas, so you no longer are proposing the same solution across the board for everybody, but you're trying to personalize your solutions toward your customer, then you can be looking at where your customers are at from all the data that you gather from them and start personalizing your offerings towards your clients. So all of these areas and way, way more are potentially areas where AI can support, can help, and can transform the process. So this is what we look at in terms of AI and in terms of its potential. Now, how did we get to where we are? Why is it that we are where we are, and what are the key enablers for AI? So we look at three things when we talk about AI. Number one is we look at big data. And there are no shortage of data which is out there, whether it's out there at your reach or whether it's sitting in your organization. Digitization is not new to any of the organizations, so you have the data there. All you need is to build a strategy around it. Compute power, which is now, again, available on the cloud, so we no longer need to build our infrastructure. And algorithms which have been there for centuries. These algorithms have been developed ages ago. It's just that now we got to a point, an inflection point, where all these components have come together, where all these components has converged, and where we're really starting to really experience the exponential dynamics of all these technologies coming together. And this is what really has blown AI out of proportions. So this is where we are. In a time of crisis, when we look at these components, all of these components are still there for us to use. The crisis has not been able to shake the cloud business. The crisis has not been able to shake scientists. They're still producing. So it is now the time to capitalize on that. So really, now, what do I want out of AI? What sort of analytics can I get out of it? Do I really use it just to do some statistics, or do I want to use it to forecast how much money I'm going to make in the next quarter? So the answer to that is that as we move forward into deeper insights, the level of cognitive analytics that we're looking at, the level of complexity of the problem that AI can solve is increasing on a day-to-day basis.
Nadine, I see that you have now already moved 2/3 of the way there. So the only thing left now is cognitive analytics. Is that correct?
That is correct. You read my mind. So now we're about 2/3 of the way. We have been stuck about the prescriptive analytics and the forecast and these little POCs here, simply because of all the resistance that we're facing. So now that the COVID-19 crisis has hit, it has really broken down our immune system. It has really changed what we can and we cannot do. So really, transformation is no longer optional at this stage. It's just imminent. The rule book has been thrown out of the window.
So what do dummies like me do in this kind of situation? Because where are we going with this? I mean, that's the key thing. What's the essence of the foundational principles that you're sharing with us?
So where we're going with this is that the essence is simply that your business, which is existing now and which is most probably being affected by this crisis, needs to move to a stage where it is no longer dependent on a lot of the components that are out there. So in a more tangible way, if you are a financial institution, now finance is all about lending money, spending money, loans, credit, all of these things. So if you go back to foundation principles, so if we move away from what banks are today, effectively, a bank is no longer needs to be an institution with an actual branch. Your branch is now a website.
Yes, so absolutely. I mean, this is what Ant Financial is doing and Amazon is working on, is that finance 4.0, banking 4.0, as you said rightly, financial basic foundational principles, which is storing money, transacting money, and lending in credit. Once those are in place, then everything can work. Now, this would have taken 10 years to happen. Will this crisis now accelerate it to the point that now, once it's all over in 6 months' time, it'll happen within a year or two because all the rule book has been thrown out? Is that how it's going to happen?
So absolutely. What is going to happen is that because a lot of businesses have come to a standstill, the transformation is now just going to break down all the barriers, and we're going to be looking at a new reality. We're simply going to be looking at a new reality because, again, as I said, it is these technologies and these sort of business models are the ones that have still been able to weather this crisis. If we look at Zoom, for example, the beautiful platform which we're using now, it has grown in value so much over the past few weeks due to this COVID-19 crisis. Microsoft Teams, which is another platform for online meetings, all the cloud-based businesses have actually flourished, have actually grown in value due to this crisis. It is not because this crisis has hit, it's simply because the model that has been built around these use cases or these businesses is a model that is not dependent on a rigid infrastructure which can be easily shaken. It is a model.
Can we just pivot to one final comment on the financial markets, because we'd like to get into your deep analysis on the COVID crisis and how AI helps there. Is there a use case that you'd like to mention as far as AI is concerned within the financial economic sector that comes to mind to you, or should we just move to the COVID crisis?
There are a couple of use cases that I can mention around the finance with AI. The first one that comes to my mind is JP Morgan. The JP Morgan has, we know it's a very large institution. What they have done is apply natural language processing to automate their entire document processing mechanism, and they were able to save over 300,000 hours of manpower by automating this whole process. Another bank, I think in India, which was really growing in size really quickly, was able to automate and use AI to create or to open accounts. So the whole verification of ID, the whole verification of KYC and all of that has been automated using AI, and they were able to create or to open over 1,500 accounts every day without the intervention of a single human being. Another bank in the UAE had a lot of complaints coming in from customers due to ATM malfunction, and due to so the clients or customers were raising questions around the ATM not functioning. So because of the big flux of concerns, they automated a chatbot to handle ATM requests, and all of these requests have been handled by the chatbot with 100% accuracy.
Yeah.
So these are just some cases.
Nadine, can we please fast forward to your segment on the COVID crisis? I think it's probably a few slides down. And particularly because your insights on that are so critical, and we'll pull it together towards the end if there are any things that we missed out on the AI for Dummies part.
So so this section was just intended to talk, and originally I intended to talk about Finance 4.0 and how AI is transforming Finance 4.0. But due to the COVID-19 crisis, I have shifted a little bit and pivoted to talk a little bit about what is happening in the world of finance now today. So just a little bit of statistics. We are on the verge of an unprecedented recession and potentially a deeper depression globally. The financial world is crumbling. Dow Jones have seen its biggest loss in its entire history. So really the question that we ask ourselves today is no longer how AI can help my financial institution. It's no longer what kind of use case I can do around AI. The biggest question that we ask ourselves today is, can banks and financial institutions in general withstand the impact of a crisis like COVID-19? So this crisis is just like a big, massive bomb hitting the entire world.
It's
So
it's like a meteorite coming and hitting the Earth, and basically last time the dinosaurs disappeared, this time perhaps other people will disappear, and maybe a lot of the financial institutions will be affected. Nadine, I'm sorry to rush you, but can we get onto your COVID crisis, please, because that's really interesting.
Yeah, sure. So, all right. So a little bit of information around this. What I've done in here is that I've asked my team and I we worked for a little bit on analyzing some of the data that's coming out from the COVID-19 crisis, just to show as a simple use case how we can, by simply analyzing some basic data that is coming out, how we can really draw some insights from AI really quickly. So what we did is that we've pulled data that is available out there from government sources to try to understand how are these trends being handled. So if we look a little bit about who are the countries which are doing well in this crisis, who are the countries that are more suffering, what is really effective in terms of handling this crisis, only by just looking at the numbers. So I am not an expert on healthcare, so this is just a data storing kind of thing, a story from data. So if we look at the data that is coming in, the number of days since the 100th case, so at how fast the disease is spreading in time. And we see, for example, US, as you can see in here, US, which is in really the biggest economy in the world, which is in deep trouble now. We see that it is doubling around 2.5 days. We see, for example, that Singapore, which is doing much better, we can see that it's because it has done a lot of contact tracing. It has done a lot of strict quarantine rules. We also see, for example, that some countries have been able to clamp down on it, for example, with South Korea, because they're doing extensive testing. So we really can see by just looking at the numbers, what is working and what is not working. So we see, for example, so when Italy started the lockdown, we see the curve started slightly to come down, even though it's not yet as effective as we would like to be. If you look a little bit about the growth rate of the disease around the world, these are just some use cases from some countries. So if you look, for example, at Italy have seen one of the worst crises globally. Because Italy has failed to take measures early on, the growth rate has hit over 4.2 quite quickly. In about 27 days from the first case, the growth rate has hit 4.2. Whereas we see, for example, South Korea, who have done extensive testing and adopted early measure, it has seen a small spike, but it's not as big as Italy. So this is just for us to show that by looking at the numbers, by analyzing numbers and data, which is available out there, by running simple algorithms, we are able to see into this crisis and to be able to draw certain insights. So moving forward in here, with all the power of AI, with all the power of the cloud that is put upon us. So this is actually sort of good news. The European Union has started a high-performance computing consortium, which includes IBM, Google, a lot of big giant tech companies. These companies have pledged to put their computing resources at the disposal of the international community who is trying to develop vaccines, antiviral medication, and to research this virus and to be able to understand how to better tackle it. As of today, this consortium has accumulated about 3.5 million CPU cores, over 41,000 GPU cores, and counting. This is just mind-blowing for us, the power of such technology at our hands, which is committed just for us to be able to do better, to be able to speed up vaccine trials, to be able to speed up the study of the virus, to be able to do more prediction on where this crisis is going, and to be able to really join the efforts of the international community to help tackle this virus. Another algorithm which was developed by Google, AlphaFold, which is a twist off on AlphaGo. This is an algorithm that is capable of decoding or predicting what would be the shape of a certain protein. As we know, the coronavirus has these protein spikes on its surface, and it's that protein which allows it to bind to the cells within our bodies. So for us, being able to determine what sort of antiviral medication we need, or what sort of vaccine we can develop to tackle this virus, it is very important for us to understand the structure of this protein. Now, our body has over 1 billion of proteins in it. These are chains of amino acid, and the protein can fold itself into different shapes. So effectively being able to distinguish the shape of a protein is like searching billions and billions of possibilities. The number is actually 1 followed by 300 zeros. This is the amount of search items that we need to be sifting through for us to know which possible amino acid combination could tackle this virus. So imagine if you are a medical professional trying to do that by hand. It's almost impossible. We have at our disposal an algorithm which can decode that shape in about 2 hours. This is the power that is now being given to us. Another initiative which is launched by Microsoft is decoding the immune response by looking at how our bodies respond to the COVID virus. So we're no longer looking at just treatment, we're looking at personalized treatment, and they're proposing to use machine learning to understand how our immune system reacts to a certain virus and to be able to accelerate which possible antiviral will be effective in fighting this COVID-19 crisis. So as we look at technology, we also have a lot of thermal imaging which has been used to help out. We also have a lot of robots which have been used. China has used these robots to the conclusion point in here, and this would be a chance for us to open the discussion a little bit. So with all of this in mind, where do we go from there? Where do we go from here? So what sort of actions can be taken? Where is it that the world is taking us from this crisis? What's the world gonna look like after this crisis? And we're no longer thinking about going back. We're thinking now of going forward and how the world is gonna be changed after this crisis. We also need to be looking at things like trust and ethics. Do we trust the world after this crisis? Do we trust our technologies? Do we trust our system after this? So these are all lessons for us to be looking into the future. So I think it is now a good time for us to start looking at the questions that have been submitted by the audience and try to
Yes,
open up this discussion.
sure. Thanks, thanks, Nadine. That's a very hopeful slide. You missed the last one with the lovely flower coming out. Yes, we need hope. We need there is a way forward after this, so we need that. Thank you very much again. Your penultimate slide was very interesting about immune systems. Now it was about our immune systems, but the world I mean, we as human beings have immune systems which are not the medical ones, but are habitual ones in terms of how we block everything in terms of change and transformation, because habit holds us back. The same thing happens with corporations. Whether you are an education environment or an energy space, there are internal immune systems which are holding you back. Now, what has happened in this particular case is that all of the immune systems have basically been thrown out of the window. So that's the fundamental shift that has taken place in this particular scenario. And so that's one of the things which is really important. Nadine, there are a couple of very interesting questions that came up from our audience, and let me just go to them. The first one is from Ashish Punjabi, who's the CEO of Jackie's Electronics, and he's a very, very keen techie and is a dear friend. And his question was, do you see a form of insurance against artificial intelligence mistakes that help to account for black swan events and situations like COVID-19? Very interesting. It is the other way around. You techies, you data scientists can mess up and screw up and take us in totally the wrong direction. And then what? Because you've got so much data on hand.
It's a very interesting question. I thank you for this question. It's brilliant. It's actually brilliant. And the honest answer is that unfortunately there isn't. The reason for that is that we do not have a governing body worldwide that is there to regulate these things, to ensure that we do not go into the unknown. The other part of it is that AI, and that also goes into Dr. Waddah's question. Please allow me to address that as well. Yes, there are limitations in the assumption. There are limitations in what the algorithms use in terms of raw data, in terms of numbers that are being fed to it. Again, AI and computers are only good at crunching numbers. So they're not good at creating insights. They're not good at creating analysis. They are good at crunching numbers. It's how we configure these numbers and these processes around these technologies that will help us drive either good or bad insights, or that would help us take actionable decisions, or that will actually limit us in what sort of insights we can get. So sure, AI has a lot of limitations. One of it is that it only crunches numbers, and it's very, very hard to explain what is happening inside of it. A lot of people, even experts, look at AI as a black box. It's a black box. You feed numbers, you get numbers out of it, but you really don't know what is happening in there. You really don't know why your AI engine is telling you that this customer who has applied for a credit limit extension should be denied. You don't see that. It just tells you, oh, it should be denied. Do we really know why? Do we really know what caused?
That's your cognitive analytics that are coming in, and I guess
we're not there yet. And the fact is, we're not there yet. The other part of it is that because AI has so much potential, and I'm here trying to extrapolate and to go into a little bit of imagination here. Imagine that we got to a point where we have an AI which is able to self-learn, an AI which is able to transfer learnings, and an AI which is able to improve itself. Now, do we really know what sort of implications that might have on our businesses, on our lives, on humanity in general? We don't. And which is why we need to have a set of rules which we all have to abide by to make sure that we use AI to actually advance humanity, advance our businesses, not to bring them back. I hope that I have answered these questions to
Yeah.
their light.
I mean, you've started answering these questions, but one of the key things I'd like to ask you is, we spoke about AI and we spoke about the COVID crisis and the two of them coming together. What are the specific ways in which you as a data scientist and as an AI specialist can visualize it helping us and getting out of this thing, and post-COVID, where does AI fit? In other words, what's the path? What's the path forward? And where does AI help?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was a bit reading the questions, so I lost you.
All right, I'll ask the questions, don't worry. I'll just share some of the other questions. The question was, one of them was on, as far as Elon Musk is concerned, he talks about AI being, our existential threat. Stephen Hawking said exactly the same thing, and there are many others. And it could be like James Barrett, who is another author, he said it's our last human invention. So there are issues there. And there was another question on conspiracy theories. So let's park the conspiracy theories away. And we know the potential threats for AI. My key question, which you just alluded towards the end of your formal presentation, was about trust and ethics. To me, I start my presentations with trust and ethics, and I end them with trust. So, do we trust our financial institutions to be able to take be responsible for this? Do we trust our healthcare industries to be able to utilize the massive power of data and AI to do responsible things as we go into the future? And who is the trust police in the world? Is there anyone left? There isn't one. So how do we set up the trust police? After the World War II, we had Bretton Woods conventions, and we had the United Nations, the World Bank, the IMF, and things like that. But those institutions were set up for that time. We need a new set of institutions, perhaps, for today as we move forward. So what do you think they are, and should we have an AI institute of whatever? I don't know. The United Nations of AI.
Yes, we do need an AI governing body, which should be people who are experts from a technical standpoint, from a legal standpoint, from humanitarians perhaps. We need a group of people who can look at AI from all the relevant standpoints and who can come together to create a framework for us to say, this is what is acceptable, this is what will advance humanity, this is what will protect us from potentially exposing personal data, from building something that we have no control over, even though that might be a little bit far-fetched. But we need to ensure that we do not get to a point where it is too late. Just like what we did with the COVID-19 crisis. We were too late in taking actions. The world was too slow, and we were reacting rather than taking proactive actions. So one of these lessons that we need to learn is how can we take proactive actions now to ensure that AI doesn't get to a point where it disrupts our lives as humans. Now, there are also other questions.
Yeah, I'll ask you the question. Ashish, again, sent a very deep question, and that is related to ethics and how the European institutions or countries got together and hit China on the head with GDPR and various other things. I'll take this one stage further. Yuval Harari wrote a very interesting article in the Financial Times about 10 days ago, where he spoke about total surveillance versus citizenship empowerment. And both are the extremes. Now, we can have total surveillance during our quarantine time, but what happens when this thing is finished? Then everybody has got total surveillance and therefore no citizenship and no privacy whatsoever. So this is a huge thing, and responsible, good governments can possibly handle it. That's where trust needs to be built back into institutions, perhaps. So that's a very interesting area. But what can we do? I mean, maybe in the future I can wear a Fitbit or something like that, and my body temperature, blood pressure, etc., can be there in a central database, run through AI, and we can handle that. But in peacetime, would I want every single step that we take that the government and Big Brother is watching? And then how is it going to be used for micro-targeting in terms of elections and all these other bits and pieces? Huge ethical issue, huge ethical dilemma. Where do you sit on that? Big question.
So let's just put things into perspective. Really, the expectation of privacy in the digital era has changed. So obviously, the GDPR has been put in place to ensure that personal data is preserved, that people do not access data that should not be accessing. But let's backtrack from that. Do we really have an expectation of privacy in the digital era? And now, when we are in a crisis like COVID-19, where we are bound to stay at home, where we're not allowed to step out of our houses, really, it puts a whole different perspective on what privacy and freedom is. So, Facebook is using our data to, with third parties to create ads for healthcare purposes, for so many purposes. Do we really trust Google and Facebook with our data?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
And they are commercial organizations, and they are basically out there to make money at the end of the day. And they can be nice and responsible with certain elements, but so what? I mean, Libra will not succeed because we don't trust Facebook with our money, and therefore it's very, very likely to fail. So again, the issue of trust comes back in. How do we build trust? I mean, how do we start with the institutions and so on? How do we create that level of transparency?
It's very difficult to create trust when we have already breached it so many times. We even lately with the Zoom application gathering so much noise and so much traction around the world. Now suddenly people are coming and saying, oh, but it has a lot of privacy issues, a lot of security issues, and people can hack in and etc. So the fact is, to build trust, what you need first is education. You need to elevate the level of awareness that the general population has. You need to understand the technology before you can trust it. You need to know. So how many people here in this call, ask yourself this question: how many people in here think that the cloud is a secure place? Perhaps a lot of you think that it is not a secure place. Right? But the fact is, with everybody having an internet connection, the cloud is actually way more secure than your computer. Do you think it is easier for somebody who is intentionally trying to hack into your data just for the sake of hacking into it, because people enjoy doing it for the sake of it? Do you think it's going to be easier for them to, if they are targeting you in specific, do you think it's going to be easier for them to hack you or to hack Microsoft Azure, which has all sorts of technology and security layers on top of it? So
I mean, data security is a huge issue, and I think we'll address that. But I think another issue, my final question at the top of the hour, and there were some other questions. Do you know of AI being used in UAE in terms of fighting this particular crisis?
Yes, the fact is not only in the UAE, it's all over the world. Kaggle has launched an international challenge, which is open source for everybody. They have put the data out there. They have put a lot of information out there for people to build prediction around it, to try, for medical community to try to build antiviral or vaccines around it. In the UAE in particular, with my team and with one of our strategic partners, we have developed a solution. I've just shown a couple of things today. Now, unfortunately, I cannot share more information with that because I'm bound by an NDA. But the fact is the data is out there. It is publicly available, or governments are releasing their data. If you go on the WHO, the WHO is also putting the data out there. So there are a lot of initiatives around the world to use AI for the COVID-19.
So that brings me to my final question, which is linked to data, linked to trust, linked to everything else we were talking about, and that is nationalist isolation. The United States is leading its nationalist isolation. A lot of the countries in Europe are doing exactly that, versus global solidarity. Now, again, these are the two extremes. How do they come back in together? Because right now, we need global solidarity. Right now, we need sharing of data. Right now, as people travel across different countries, we would need to trust a plane coming in from China to the UAE, to Dubai, in 6 months' time, that everybody on that plane has been checked and verified and tracked and traced and et cetera, which basically means a huge amount of data exchange and data sharing. That means we have to build trust. That means we have to build institutions and so on. So nationalist isolation versus solidarity. Where do you stand? And do you have this magic wand, Dr. Nadine, that you can wave and give us this hope for the future?
I don't have a magic wand. No, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Tarek. I'm sorry to disappoint everybody. The fact is, nobody has the magic wand. There needs to be a lot of effort around the world. There needs to be a lot of work around the world with different experts. I'm not a medical expert. I don't have the solution. What I have is some data science knowledge, which I'm trying to use to help governments understand what are the effective measures in fighting this crisis. Yep. And perhaps if I can share my knowledge and my skills with anybody who can make a change within this crisis, that I'm at their disposal. Also, there's a very interesting question which I would like to answer, related to: do we have enough predictive variables to do predictions on COVID-19 using AI? And that is a very important question. And this does not only apply to the COVID-19 crisis, but to any AI problem that we tackle. The fact is, we need to be very careful about the data that we have, the quality of the data that we have, how we're looking at it. We need to understand that AI cannot be trusted as just a blind black box. We need to have a better understanding of what's happening inside. We need to keep in mind that there are factors that we don't know and that are probably affecting these trends that AI cannot capture. If we do not fully understand them, then the AI cannot capture it. So we need to be very, very careful about how much we trust it.
Yep. So that's it. Oh my God, another couple of questions, and we'll do those and we will end. Thanks a lot, Dr. Nadine and Tarek. Good insights. So we've got that. Somebody found it very useful and informative, so thank you for that. What can an individual do today to enhance his or her knowledge of AI and its associated branches in order to better prepare for this AI future? Last question, Dr. Nadine, you're an ex-professor, or a professor still. One final word, and then we will.
So there are no shortage of information out there. Information is abundant, it's available. Plenty of platforms out there which have courses which are open. I would recommend the Coursera, which has a lot of very interesting courses. This is a very nice platform which has a group of courses in different domains, so that could be an outlet. So there are a lot of information on YouTube and other websites, but if you want something structured, there are also a lot of big companies who have online content which is freely available for everybody. So check out these, check out Coursera, EDX. Microsoft has a very nice education platform, which is really, really, really cool. So check these out. We all have plenty of time on our hands now that we are stuck at home. So it's a great time for personal development and learning.
On that note, let me start building the conclusion to all of this. Nadine, you spoke about AI, and just for us to get a good feel of where we are on that. and we pivoted into the financial markets and all of the shocks that we have on the system. And then we got into a very interesting, deep discussion on COVID-19 and the impact. So thank you very, very much for that. A couple of final remarks from me. One of them is that I am genuinely a very optimistic person. And I feel that this time is a huge, huge opportunity for us in a funny sort of way. As Charles Dickens said, that, you know, there are good times and there are bad times, and we all come together. And this is the time when, over the next, whatever phase we are going to be in this isolation and quarantine, come up with the plans for the future. Come up with some reflection, some introspection, some thought, collective intelligence, collective consciousness, you know, bring all of those powers together. And I genuinely believe in the abundance in this world, because those basic variables haven't changed. As we beat this, we will move forward to abundance again. But in the meantime, we need some tools, and a lot of the work that we do in these webinars will demonstrate that, and come to our website and so on, and you will see the work we're doing in terms of crisis management, in terms of helping people and helping companies move forward. There was one little tip, or it's very simple thing that I have been working on, and that if this crisis lasts 3 months, 6 months, or more than 12 months, have we got a scenario plan? Because if it's 3 months, it'll just be a nice holiday, we write a book, game over, we come back to work in July, August, and everything is fine. If it's 6 months, a lot of companies will go under. But if it's 12 months, we need to completely switch the way we are thinking, completely. Because the world is going to be substantially and massively different. And I think we potentially can visualize ourselves into the future in 12 months' time and look back and say, where are we? What do we need to change now? With immunity systems, human and corporate immunity systems, folks, and all the leaders who are in there, who are in decision-making time, never miss the opportunity of a good crisis. This is the time for change and transformation. The rule book has been thrown out. Nobody can turn around and say, oh, we can't do this, we can't. Everything has been thrown out. Look at the education system. Every time was, we can't do this, we can't do that, and boom, in one go, everything changed overnight. And the same can happen in other industries. So, folks, right now is a time for transformation. Right now is to throw the bad things behind us in the old normal and look forward into the future for the new normal, new leadership, and new thinking. And these webinar series are going to pull together and test completely new ideas from the different kinds of people that are coming in, and there's a diversity of people from all over the world who will come in, and we will share this experience with you. So please visit us on exponentialtalks.com and on our other websites. All of this thing is going to be available to you as a resource, including Nadine's brilliant deck. We thank her very, very much for her hard work. We thank all of the participants who've been here. And, you know, surprisingly, over 90% of the participants who came in stayed. So obviously we did something right. So thank you again. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for your patience, everybody.
And we will reconnect in a week's time. And that will be with John Stanley, who is a futurist, who is a Singularity University faculty member, author, and so on, and a good friend. And he is going to be talking to us about the new trends and connecting the dots. And he'll take a completely different perspective of consciousness from various other metaphysical issues and so on. So that'll be yet another experience and another. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, super. I think we'll end there. Thank you very much. And thank you for all of the people who stayed with us all the way through. And thank you again, Nadine. I know you worked very hard to pull this thing together. We greatly appreciate it, and hopefully it's affected people and given them some things to think about, how to see around corners and how to build a future. I still see a very happy and abundant future. We just need to find a way to get there.
Everybody.
Thank you. God bless. Stay safe. All the best. Cheers. Bye.